When I started working in the music industry, I started working with various music photographers, and one was Ross Halfin, who I spent about a year working with in '93 through '94. It was obviously the film age, so there was a lot of loading film backs, even shooting live in the pit. It was a case of unloading, reloading, writing on the film canisters, +2 stops or whatever. And then doing lots of very quick setup shots, and it definitely gave me an insight into that world and showed me how to work fast, and quickly I started doing my own stuff. And funnily enough, the first image that I ever had published was taken while I was assisting of Chris Cornell at the Big Day Out in 1994. And it was used on the back cover of a magazine in the UK, and that kind of got my foot in the door at some of the magazines like Kerrang and Raw and Q and Mojo, and started that relationship, which was good. So when I started out, I shot more live shots, I guess, with a few portraits that I was brave enough to set up unless I was being commissioned. But as the years have gone on, I do actually think I prefer shooting portraits because it feels like something that I can control, and a special connection between me and the subject that is really just mine. I don't really like thinking too much about what I'm going to do when I do a shoot. I quite like to let it evolve as organically as possible, because every photo shoot is not, is a bit forced in a way, so you want it to be as quick and easy and painless as possible. There's this rule that photographers have to abide by generally, and it's 3 songs, no flash. And sometimes that can be a real pain because the light show can be terrible for those first 3 songs, or they could be really fast songs, or the pit can be really crowded, and you really have to sort of choose your spot. And it's a bit like potluck really, because the lead singer might come and do something really amazing at your side, but there's no way you can run across. So luckily, when I shoot live now, it's generally shooting more like fly on the wall and sort of like the full set. So I'm lucky, but it's you tend to overshoot when you've only got 3 songs and you don't really think creatively. You just got to get the shots. So it's a different ball game. I met with Steve from Behind the Gallery in the UK last year, and we had a chat about the possibility of me coming over here, and I was very excited to do so. So we've been talking for a few months, and I've been in the process of digitizing just a really small part of my archive. It could keep me busy for the rest of my life, I think, but I had to sort of stop at a certain point and go, okay, I've got some exclusives. I've kind of looked at Australian bands because I thought that would give it more relevance. So it's interesting, this shot of Nick Cave was actually shot for a British newspaper, and I was commissioned to go. They'd hired a room in a hotel, but actually it was not really, it wasn't a bedroom, it was just like a sort of little office study kind of room. And as a photographer, sometimes you arrive, you don't know what it's going to look like, and you've got to be inventive, and there wasn't really, there's nothing I could take off the walls. And anyway, I did the shoot as best as I could, and did a few different variations, but it never ran. So I felt real shame that it was really crap, and that it, I just felt bad about the whole thing. So it was shelved and filed away, and it's only recently, for this exhibition in fact, that I thought, all right, I'm going to look at some of the Australian artists that I've shot. And so I had a look at the Nick Cave images and scanned a few, and it's amazing actually how with the passing of time, actually it's had an amazing reception, and people really like it, which is weird because I sort of had the shame, but I do like it more now. This shot of the Chiles was actually shot in Claridge's Hotel, which is a very old-fashioned posh hotel in London. And I arrived with all my equipment, and the lift was like one of those really old-fashioned tiny ones that you can barely get the backdrop in. And anyway, I clumsily got everything upstairs and made a studio in a room. And then they arrived, and I did a few individual shots first, and then the whole band were there. Flea had actually had a bit of an argument with the journalist, so there was a bit of a concern that he was actually going to do this, but within seconds they just sort of unfold and they do what they do, which is just kind of a bit of crazy chaos. I had some pink gaffer tape that I was using to hold down my backdrop, and Anthony just picked it up and started, you know, taping himself up, and it's just like, I don't really know what's going on, but you just have to, I think a lot of the time when you're shooting anyone, you have to allow them to be themselves and just be comfortable, and I think you can't really go wrong with the Chiles, can you? This shot of the Gallagher brothers was taken in the early 2000s in London at a club called the Scala. We were doing a feature on brothers actually, and I was taking pictures of other people together, but I really wanted to get some individual shots of Noel and Liam, and we were set up in a tiny corridor that was quite grotty, and they were drinking cans of Red Stripe and smoking cigarettes, because obviously you could still do that. I had a really simple setup with one light, and this was shot on medium format camera film. And I just took a few very quick rolls of colour in black and white, and then the pictures at the time, I thought, okay, I'm glad I got those shots, but again, I wasn't like, you know, these are the most amazing shots. They were decent, and the feature ran and all good. But I made this composite where they kind of look like convicts, and I just think now I really love this shot. I'm really proud of it. I think they have the most incredible faces, and I just love how I managed to make it look like a studio with what I had. Noel's got such an amazing face to look at, and I think Liam looks very soft and quite beautiful, which sort of contradicts sometimes how he can be. But yeah, when you sort of pan out, you would have seen the cigarette ends and the cans, and actually it's not what you'd imagine on first glance. This shot of Steve Jones was taken for a project I was doing called Resonators, and it was pictures of guitarists with their guitars. And as part of the whole project, I went to LA for a week and had this crazy schedule where I was shooting, you know, Slash in the morning, John Frusciante in the afternoon, Paul McCartney. It was just like bonkers. But as part of it, Steve Jones agreed to be in the project. And before I got there, I was like, can you let me know where you live so I can work out my schedule? And he was like, I'll let you know when you get here. And I was like, okay. So when I got there, I was like, hello, I'm here now. And we set a date and a time, and got there a little bit early and saw him arriving on his motorbike, which was quite cool. We went in, and it was definitely sort of a man pad, and he was great, and we did some shots outside, and then he was sort of playing guitar and playing something called Name That Tune, where you play a few sort of notes from a song and you have to name that tune in three notes or whatever. Anyway, that was quite good. But he also had this Evel Knievel outfit that actually had his initials, Steve SJ, on, and his front door is actually, the inside of it is painted like a Union Jack, and I thought, well, that is, you know, it's pretty larger than life, isn't it? So that's how this shot came about. This shot of the Mars Volta was shot in their hometown of El Paso, where they grew up. And what was brilliant for me about it, it is one of my favourite shots that I've ever taken. We didn't know exactly where we were going to be doing the shoot, but they had obviously a few ideas of places that they knew, like an old cemetery, and this area, which was down by the train tracks, it was quite deserted. And when we got there, I had a medium format camera, my tripod, a light on a stand, very simple, but what I love about it is just the aesthetic that I captured, because not only do they look incredibly cool, you can't really go wrong, but with my very simple lighting, the fact that they were lit by the sun behind them, there's this lovely key light around them, and then the train started rolling over the sort of overhead tracks, and it just looked, or it felt amazing just being there, but also it just came out and I was very grateful. The new projects that I've got coming up are, well, one will be continuing with getting my book together. I also have to put on a workshop for Nikon, because I'm now an ambassador, and there's a big exposition called Photo London that I'm taking part in. So that's going to be great. I've got a very cool shoot lined up for that. And then just like, you know, normal money jobs, because that's how you've got to pay the bills. So I just love shooting people, anyone, but as far as projects, we'll just see what comes along.